My name's Dan Harris, and I'm a beekeeper. Today, I'm going to be pulling honey supers here in my backyard. A couple of different things that I want to talk about before we get started. The first is, of course, personal taking care of yourself when you're out in the heat. It's going to hit 90 today. Sun is out, it's blazing hot. That baby's full of water. I'll empty it a couple times today. I stop and pour water in because it comes right back out. So that's first in the personal kind of care thing. Second, I burn really easily, got pretty fair skin. This is kind of it's a plug for this product, but only because I really do like it. It's called Blue Lizard sunscreen. I buy it by the gallon. It is extremely water resistant. The active sunscreen compound in it is zinc oxide, the primary one. They use a couple of others, but zinc oxide, that's the good stuff as far as keeping the sun from burning your skin and causing, both UVA and UVB. If you're my age and you used to go to the beach once in a while, you'd see the lifeguards, their noses would be white because they had put their sunscreen or block on, and that white was zinc oxide. This stuff, they micronized that zinc oxide somehow so that it doesn't, paint you white. It blends in. And another cool thing, and I've been using this stuff for 15 years, another cool thing is this last gallon I bought, I think it was last year, I just happened to notice that the first ingredient on the list of ingredients, which is the ingredient that is supposed to be, the most by volume of the product, the finished product, is now beeswax. And that was kind of interesting. It used to be water. So for whatever that's worth, they've converted to beeswax as their first by volume ingredient, and then there's zinc oxide and some other stuff. Anyway, it works. Try to protect yourself. And the third thing on the self-protection plan, for those of you who might have watched some of my other videos, you probably noticed that I've used up my old veil. I've got a new one, or I've got another. This guy, you probably can't see it, but the screen is coming loose from it's done, and it's the way I am with things. I tend to use them up. So those are some of the things in just looking after yourself kind of mode. And I'm going to talk for a second about what I'm going to do, and then I'll do it. There are a variety of ways of getting honey off of hives. I know people that have a dozen or so hives, and they actually pull each frame out of each super individually, brush the bees off, put it in a transport box, and they load that box one frame at a time to remove the bees. And that, works. It works well. It's tedious, time consuming, labor intensive, but if you got a handful of hives, you can certainly do that. Show and tell time, isn't it? Okay. Otherwise, I'll get a couple of those out. Otherwise, if you ever noticed, some beekeepers, that there's this interestingly shaped hole in these inner covers, and you start asking yourself, well, wonder what they were thinking. What was the purpose behind that? With that, I can't find mine. I had a couple of them. There used to be a bee escape, little plastic bee escape device that actually fit these holes, and it allowed bees, so you would basically take the honey super you hope to extract, you'd put this on top of the hive and put that honey super on top of that. The bees that were in that honey super could go through this gizmo and go out, but because of the design of it, they couldn't get back in. So over a period of 24 to 36 hours, they'd pretty well empty that super of bees. And you don't see people using those anymore, but that hole has persisted, that shape. This is a newer bee escape. Same basic idea. You take and you remove the honey super you hope to harvest. You put this on top of the hive, put the honey super on top of it. The bees smell the pheromones of the rest of the hive, and as they leave the super for whatever other duties they might have, they smell the pheromones from the hive. They come down and eventually find their way back out. When they try to re-enter, they're drawn to the pheromones of the super, the smells from the super, and they're drawn to here. So there'll be a glob of them right here trying to get back up, but they don't work their way back into these corner holes. And that's another way to get bees out of supers. The reason I don't use these, well, there's a number of reasons I don't use them, but one of the big reasons is I live in an area where small hive beetles are they're a problem. And the idea of putting one of these on, putting this honey super on, and going back in a day or so to take the honey off, leaves those small hive beetles really in control of that super without anybody to protect it for that period of time. And they're surely going to start laying eggs. And, you know, I just don't want eggs in my honey. I don't want small hive beetle larvae in my honey, and neither do my customers. And so for around here, these aren't terribly practical. All right, continuing on with show and tell. I use fume boards. This is a fume board. I got a handful of them. It's got an absorbent material on the inside. I have a couple different varieties, and there are a number of different varieties, but in essence, what you do is you take the top off of the hive, you spray a bee repellent on this. They're typically, the bee repellents are compounds that volatilize, and the bees are just seriously offended by them, and they'll move away from them. You put it down on the hive, the sun hits that, heats it, volatilizes that compound, and it drives the bees out of the supers. There are a variety of different compounds you can spray in them. I think it's Honey Robber uses butyric acid. It is the most effective bee repellent. The problem with it is it stinks to high heaven. It's weird that it doesn't contaminate the honey, but it doesn't seem to. But anything you get it on is going to stink from then till eternity, yourself included, although you can eventually get it off yourself. Your clothes are probably pretty well ruined if you ever spill it in your vehicle. It's a disaster, but it works. It works real well. Works real well. So it's a good compound. I don't use it. There's a couple of other compounds that smell better and are less effective than the butyric acid ones. They have some sort of proprietary compounds in them, so I can't tell you what's in them. Some kind of aldehydes and alcohols and fragrances and stuff. They're volatile. They claim that they're all natural compounds. One is Fisher's Bee Quick. The other is, this is called Honey Bandit. Man Lake sells it. They smell a lot better. They work okay. If it's a hot, sunny day, they'll work pretty well. So that's what I use. I've tried Fisher's. This smells just like Fisher's Bee Quick. I don't know if they're exactly the same or not. I think Mr. Fisher says not, but I don't know, and I don't care. My issue with Fisher's was that I could never buy it by the gallon. Every time they had it in the catalog, but every time I went to order it, it was unavailable. And I didn't want to be buying it in overpriced little spritzy jars. So I can get this in a gallon, and so that's what I do. On another note, whether it's Fisher's Bee Quick or this, and I haven't used butyric acid in a lot of years, so I really can't talk about that very much, but this stuff, I put some in this container, as you see, in this spray bottle, one of those universal spray bottles. Most of these inexpensive spray bottles that you get from the big box stores, you know, if you use this stuff in them one time, one day, the spray doesn't work afterwards. It just is done. So basically, for however many days you plan to use the stuff, you have to have a spray bottle for each one. I found, you see this is the orange color, this is Home Depot's color. The Home Depot generic ones actually work pretty well and will last considerably better than any of the other ones I found. So just kind of a hint on where you might, it's called an HDX sprayer. At the same time as I pull honey supers, I will be pulling all of the honey supers that are on any of the hives, any that I'm going to extract, and then I will, at the same time, I will initiate my my first varroa mite treatment. And what I'm using, I'll you know, later in the summer, when it really, it's going to be in the 90s this week, but not much more. It's going to be low 90s probably. I'll be using Apiguard. This is Apiguard. It's like a cake frosting like material, thymol based. Day Dance sells these little delivery pads with it. I like their delivery pads. I've tried 3x5 or 5x7 note cards, but they soak up so much of the liquid that I'm afraid that it doesn't stay as effective. It may or may not. So basically what I'll do is I'll take the honey supers off, and while the bees are still down in the lower box, I'll pull a frame or two or three, find where the brood is. I'll use one of these, there's one. One of these syringes. I'll suck up the Apiguard for, I think, well, I'll have to reread the instructions, make sure I get the amounts right, but according to instructions, I do a full dose. I've tried to do reduced dosages, and I just didn't feel like I got the same efficacy. They say when it's really hot, you can reduce the dosage, but they claim that you should be able to use it up to 105 degrees out, and I'm not looking for any 105 degree temperatures. Later in the season, if I treat, and I will be treating some hives later in the season, I'll go with a compound called Apivar. They're strips that are impregnated with amitraz, and at really elevated long-term temperatures, they're a lot less disruptive. So basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to suck some of the stuff out according to the full, and I think it's 50 milliliters, is that right? Maybe. Probably 50 milliliters. And I'll squirt it onto this delivery pad, place it right above the brood. I use shims. You don't have to use shims if you're using this pad. Apiguard also comes in little tins. If you're using the tins, you need the shims. I use the shims because it helps me when I come back to find where the brood was, to reapply the second round. This is a 2-round treatment. I go back in about 10 days is what I do, and treat it again. It smashes the stuff out. A lot of it drops off. It winds up all over the bottom of frames, and when I go to pull them out, almost invariably it doesn't appear to have all been used, or they've gotten to it. It's both a fumigant and a contact agent. It's based on thymol. The main active ingredient is thymol, so it's a naturally occurring compound, but I want to get full benefit from it, and I think the shims help me to do that. And then I go back, so I'll do treatment first round today as I'm pulling supers. I'll go back in about 10 days. I'll reapply a second one of these. I'll remove the first one, and then I'll go back in another 10 or 12 days. I'll remove the shim and whatever's left of the delivery pad, and I'll be done. And then we'll check the hives again later in the season, and any that are showing signs of heavy varroa mite loads will get another treatment of some sort. Does that make sense? I hope so. There it is. That's how I do it. you find 10 other beekeepers, and amongst them there'll be 20 other ways of doing it. That's how I do it, and it works for me. So anyway, I appreciate it. I appreciate you watching, and have a great day. Show you the front of the hives. You can tell, you know, that it's doing its thing because it's pushing them right out the front door. You see, the bees have really, I mean, they've moved down. They're out of here. All the way down into this deep, they're gone. So like I say, good hot day like today. Then what I want to take a quick look at is there any brood up here? Well, they're coming up too quick to suit me on this, but let's take a quick look. If they're not, well, we'll see how much of this. Oh yeah, there's brood all the way up here. You can see it. Brood. They're backfilling some, but there's a good bit of brood. So that tells me that I can treat them. So I do this, and I do this right on top of the brood, like so. And wow, y'all, why would you be mad at me? I can't understand that. Whew. All right, put it all together like so. 10 days, we'll come back and do it again, and that's where we'll be. All right, we're gonna end this here.